It is time to grab your dose of compassion. Share your story and solve your anxiety and depression. Welcome to Keep Calm in a Crazy World with your host, Jodi Amon.
Hi everybody, it's Jodi here, and I got Julie Barton here with me. And we're just adjusting the camera angle here, and I know there's a real big reflection, so I'm trying to fix that. I wish I could get rid of this. I can. All right. This is Julie. You can see her. You can wave hello to everybody on Facebook.
Hi, everybody.
And if you want to, there's only a couple people got on already, but if you want to, you could go to your page and share it. So we're going to call up the radio and start the radio show in another minute or so. We just wanted to get on here, make sure that you could see us. And you're here, and you're excited. And we're going to do this. We're going to have some fun. All right. Is this a good angle here? You can see her? No. I have to turn it that way, and I know that means she's... because I don't want that reflection. All right, everybody. I'm going to call it, so yes, I'm going to turn down the your volume on here, and you could call in to the radio show. All right, everybody, let's see if it works. Taking risks. Taking risks. Hey, Christine.
Your show now, press 1 to hear important
We're going to
You're
start.
calling back into a live show. We are reconnecting you now. Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4,
5 seconds.
3, 2, 1.
It is time to grab your dose of compassion. Share your story and solve your anxiety and depression. Welcome to Keep Calm in a Crazy World with your host, Jodi Amon.
Hey everyone, good evening. Welcome to Keep Calm Radio with me, Jodi Amon, and I have a very, very special treat tonight. We are having our first guest this evening on Keep Calm Radio. Our second, actually, I had one in December. It didn't go where we had some technical problems, and I'm in and trying it again, because that's what we have to do in our life, you know? We can't just give up on things. We have to keep going, because there's always going to be challenges. There's always going to be struggles. There's always going to be hurdles for us to go over each and every day, and we just have to keep going over it. And I'm so happy to have Julie here. I read her book, Dog Medicine. It was a beautiful book, and I know it's touching the heart and the mind and the soul of so many people, so many readers who've read this book. So I am so happy to unmute her in a second here. If I remember how to do it, I am going to unmute. There we go. Hello, Julie.
Hello. Hi, Jodi.
Hello.
Of course, I have my dogs start barking.
Dogs, of course, but you're the dog lady.
Of course. Just as we start talking, my dogs decide to make some noise.
Hi, Jan. Yes, you know what, though? You know what? My audience really loves that we just could be ourselves, and that they know that we're just people, and people are people, and, you know, people feel like, oh, they're the only ones who make mistakes. And we were talking about this before we went live here tonight, that Julie was talking about how so many people write to her day after day after day about how her book helped them not feel so alone. And her book is her memoir. It's a story about when she was debilitated by depression when she was just 22 years old, you know, and how she got a dog, had support, got a dog, and brought herself back into the world. And it's really a heartwarming, hope-filling story. And so I'm so happy to introduce you to Julie. And you can say more about that, Julie, like how you get these emails from people every day.
Well, I get a lot of messages from people who say, I thought I was the only one who suffered this deeply and who was this saved by their dog. Sometimes it's a cat, but I'd say 95% of the time it's a dog. And it's people who, I just got a message the other day from a woman who is 18, and she said she had suffered terribly with depression for years and had a suicide attempt, and nothing helped her until she adopted a dog. And she thought that she was the only one that's dependent on her dog, and she was the only one that's, in love with this creature who got her up and got her outside and gave her purpose. And when she read the book, she saw that somebody else both felt that way and also had been really down in the depths and felt alone and constantly self-flagellating, beating themselves up. That is something that a lot of people are grateful to see, I think.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's a beautiful story. Are you having feedback, or are you doing okay?
No,
okay,
I'm not.
Perfect. No, I know I can't get my volume all the way down here, but so I hope it sounds good for everybody. You could just let me know. I'm on live Facebook. If you're listening to this on the radio, you could also know that I do these shows live on Facebook. If you ever want to watch me, you could definitely call in at 657-383-1870. Or thank you for the hearts, or you could just write a question up here on Facebook or tell us your story, because that's really what we're here for, is spreading the word that you are not alone. And it's surprising. Sometimes it's surprising because I'm in this world and I do this work every day, but that people still think that they're the only ones whose dogs saved their life, because I hear it over and over and over.
Yeah. I think that maybe it's partly because of the intensity of the connection. It's not something that people are talking about regularly. You still have a lot of people who say it's just a dog, or who say, that this person is too obsessed with their animal, or they can't do anything without them, and it's too dependent of a relationship, or, there's still a lot of people who just don't get it. Who really would like to minimize the connection. But there are, like you're saying, a growing number of people. And many of them are trauma survivors, veterans, people who are suffering from PTSD, either from war or from life, who recognize that this connection is a lifesaver. And that's my people. They're out there. But I think that part of depression is an isolation. I become isolated when I'm depressed. I isolate myself. I don't want to be around anybody. I don't want anybody to know the depth of my suffering. But I have to say, after publishing this book, I have chronic depression, and I've had about 4 major bouts of it in my life. And my last one was after this book came out, and it was a wonderful process and a wonderful experience. But, I did a 14-city tour, and my life was really disrupted and changed for better and for worse. But when I came home, I started to think again. And this time, instead of, staying in bed, not telling anybody what was going on, or just trying to function but functioning poorly, I announced it to everybody. And I said, I'm suffering again.
Do you mean like on social media you announced it, or you announced it to your family? What?
Yeah, I did. I did it on Facebook.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm really struggling. And I just, I don't remember exactly what I said, but I was really specific. And I said, I'm not doing well. And, some people in interviews go, well, you got a dog. Once you got a dog, did everything suddenly get better? And of course, the answer is no. He taught me a lot about how to live and how to live well and how to treat myself well. But for me, sadly, that, it's not a cure-all. But when I did tell people on social media and announced it widely, which was terrifying.
Yeah.
showed up at my door with flowers, with cards, with movie DVDs, with food. You know, one of my friends, you know, he's a dad who lives around the corner. We have kids the same age, and he's also, you know, creative. And he came over and he stood in my dining room, and tears were just pouring down my face. And I could see him looking at me going like, okay, this is what this is. And, you know, he said, all right, let's sit down. We're going to have a meal. I'm giving you a Will Ferrell DVD.
Wow.
And it was really hard because I was in my most vulnerable place, you know, that place where you think, I can't imagine anybody ever seeing me this way. And he was standing in my house.
Wow.
But it was also really revolutionary for me because it didn't feel like I had to hide it. And this was a friend who still showed up.
Yeah, that's really incredible. And you know, I read the news today about Prince Henry came out and said that, you know, he almost had some breakdowns and did see a counselor, you know, in the last 5 years. And he came out to say that because he wants people to know, like, you're not messed up, you're not crazy, you're not this, you know, these things, you know, happen to everybody. And they're horrible. And a lot of times, and I know you speak about your own trauma when you were young, and so a lot of times it's connected to some parts of the past. But really, our culture and our the world we live in really sets us up for you know, having a lot of, you know, problems emotionally, I think. You know, so it's not always that there's that trauma from the past. Sometimes it makes it more complex, and I know you speak about that. I really appreciate that because I've been working with people who've been abused for, you know, 20 years, and, you know, I think people don't realize how frequently it does happen just within the family. It's so common. So I really appreciate that.
That's what a lot of the messages actually that I get are people saying, thank you for bringing up the problem of sibling abuse.
Yeah.
Because not enough people are talking about it. And it's I always call it the last sort of sanctioned form of domestic violence because people say that kids will hit each other, and they will. I mean, that's the thing. I have kids, and they have fought, you know, but there has never been a point where, you know, I have let any sort of physical altercation go beyond, you know, one moment, and then I'm like, stop.
Yeah.
This is not how we express ourselves. This is not, I know you're angry. Let's talk about how crazy angry you are, but you may not, you know, raise a hand to your sister. And that, you know, I wish that had happened for me, but it didn't. But the beauty of that is that I do have a family where I was able to say as an adult, what happened? Why didn't you intervene?
Yeah.
And I got some answers. And I think that, you know, there's a lot of people growing up in houses where they are being told on a very regular basis that they're pretty worthless, directly and indirectly.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely.
It's devastating. It's devastating. It will affect your whole life. And so the more we can talk about it, the better, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. I do appreciate. So, you know, almost every day in the news, there's more people coming out and saying, "Listen, I'm struggling," and I think it's so helpful. It's so helpful to know that you're not alone because I think, like you said, you get isolated, and that's what most people do when they don't feel good emotionally. Like they're either sad or anxious. You know, I talk to a lot of people who are anxious, talk to a lot of people who are sad. The first thing they all do is isolate themselves for a lot of different reasons, you know, because they don't feel worthy of other people, or they're afraid that someone might, you know, hurt them too. If you've been abused when you were young, you can't be vulnerable. Like, it is not okay if you're vulnerable. That's really risky. And so that's, you know, that's always a huge issue that we're working against. But that isolation, like I'm burdening people, or I'm not worthy of someone else's time, or people won't understand me, and just feeling so different and outside. And a lot of my clients describe that there's a party going on inside the house and they're outside. And they could see the party going on in the windows, and it's like raining outside, and they're like not allowed in. That's how they feel.
Yeah.
They feel just different and that they don't belong. So
Yeah.
on top of whatever they're struggling with, like the loss of relationship or the, whatever's bothering them in the moment, all of these stories of their worthlessness is coming up, like you don't belong and you're not worthy, is like compounds it all. And they all that negative self-judgment. People abuse us, and then we pick up that, cross and continue on with the abuse in our own heads. And I don't know if you want to say more about that. Like, how did you break that?
Yeah.
Those voices of.
Yeah. Well, so one of my favorite quotes is a James Baldwin quote. He said that, he said, it wasn't the world that was my oppressor. He said, but what the world does to you, if it does it long enough and effectively enough, you begin to do it to yourself.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what I did. And honestly, I still do. I still have to work at it. I wouldn't say that I broke the cycle somehow and never went back to it. I really tried really, really hard to be mindful of my thoughts, but there are times they're too fast for me. They run away.
And I have the same thing. I tell people all the time because they're surprised. They're like, oh, you're lucky. You're like happy. Look at you. You're smiling and all the pictures. I'm like, I work on it every day. Every day, like I have those negative thoughts and I have to go in and do that. And some people will be, some people think it's not fair that I have to do that. You know what? Everybody who's happy does that because we've all been conditioned. We've all had some people tell us we're worthless. Of course, some of it is to an extreme extent and just awful. I'm not trying to say everybody, has been abused. I'm not trying to belittle people who've really been abused. But, we've all had some degrading experiences somewhere. And and then culturally, we're all going against this. Like, we have to be good enough, smart enough, cool enough, all these cultural expectations we have that we cannot meet. And so we're constantly feeling bad about ourselves all the time. So, it's just and then we think we're the only ones because no one talks about that.
Yeah. Well, it's people. I've had many therapists say to me, there are grooves in your brain that were sort of paved long ago, and it's really hard for you to not fall into those grooves. And those grooves are you're worthless, you're unlovable, you're unlikable, and you're stupid, and you're ugly. And there were all the things that I heard as a kid and feared. I didn't know if they were true or not. I mean, part of me did believe them. Part of me thought that's got to be wrong. But I for sure feared them, and that, I think, takes a really long time to change. And like you're saying, it takes a daily practice to just, for me, it's less sort of positive self-talk. That doesn't necessarily do it for me because I'm too cynical, I think. I'm like, yeah, whatever. I think for me, it is just noticing. Because when I have a thought that's like, well, of course they don't want you to do that. They don't like you and blah, blah, blah. I can just notice it and go, Like, I get kind of curious about it. Instead of judging it and saying, I shouldn't be thinking that way. I shouldn't be, so negative. Why am I always so negative? Because that's another, rabbit hole you can go down.
It's like layers of self-judgment, right? You judge it, and then you judge that, and then you judge that, and then you... Yeah.
Some of the most helpful things I've heard have been, treat yourself like you would your own baby. Come to yourself with love and kindness. Like, why would, so those negative thoughts come and you go, okay, I see you. Can you hear my dogs? They're barking like crazy.
Dogs, we love dogs. We're good. Dogs are included. Yeah, so treat yourself like you're a baby. Like, treat yourself like you're the own baby. Like, be that kind and gentle.
Be that kind and
non-judgmental.
But
it also takes you out of yourself.
Really
now you're
hard.
Observer. Like when you're in close to the chaos of it, like you're so close to the chaos and it's hard. And in that kind of exercise, you're also pulling yourself like away you know, kind of like away from the chaos of it, to see like from the big picture view, and you see yourself as another person, almost you're a witness, and then you could be much kinder that way. There the dogs go.
You're breaking.
I'm breaking it.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
A little bit.
So, you know, you know, what you're describing to me, and I describe it as like being a witness to your own situation. Like you get to, when you're so close to the chaos of the anxiety, the depression, those negative self-talk all the time, you know, you want to bring yourself away somehow. But I always say that you have to, if you validate yourself, it's much easier. Then you could pull yourself out. Now you're an observer of the whole situation. And from that observer role, you know, you see yourself as a person, you could just be much kinder to yourself, or a little baby, or a child, or, you know, somebody worthy anyway, and then you could just be really understand and be compassionate. Like, I think we don't learn how to be compassionate with ourselves, you know?
You really don't. You really don't. And it's such an important skill. And also, we don't learn that it's okay to feel what you need to feel. You know, for me, I think sorrow was such a taboo. I mean, I think I was
sorrow was taboo.
Conditioned for whatever reason to be cheerful and chipper and happy and nice and da-da-da-da-da. And I didn't always feel that way.
Yeah.
And
people seem to resent that, you know.
Anger and sorrow, and those things need to be okay. You know, when my kids are sad, I'm like, you know what? Just cry. It's totally okay. Everybody's sad sometimes. Everybody's angry sometimes. You know, that's an important emotion to feel. It's validating, you know, for me to say that to them. And I don't know that, I think it was maybe the times and other factors, but I was very often, you know, just sort of like really only welcome when I was cheerful.
Yeah. But that was like in your head. Everybody else loved you no matter what. But you feel like they don't.
Yeah. But I also think that...
Yeah. Oh, they do.
I think that women and girls in particular are told that you have to be, you know, that's why so many people go up to women and go, hey, smile. You know, like they don't do that to an angry guy. Like, you wouldn't do that. You know, I think that's part of it. But for me, it was important for me to learn that it was okay.
Yeah. It's like, so, you know, I used to work in a preschool with kids who were at risk of being abused in their house, risk of foster care. And when one kid was crying, the other kids would come up and hit them. Because it's not okay to be vulnerable. I was saying this before a little bit. It's not okay to be vulnerable. And so for women, you know, it seems like they're judging other women, but they're almost acting out their own oppression. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So when they go up to that woman and say, smile, it's like, don't be vulnerable because it's dangerous, is what they're saying to you. And that comes out of their own fear, right? It's like, it seems like they're not tolerating you, but it's their own stuff that they're expressing there in the moment. But we think it's about us. And then we think that we're not allowed. Yeah. And so we get that message, but it's a sign of this oppression of, you know, our gender for a really long period of time is like, you know, if you're vulnerable, you could be hurt. And so that's why it's not tolerated. And we need to kind of spread the message that it is okay to feel. And in fact, if you don't allow yourself to feel, you're going to stay stuck in that high emotional. It's hard to heal from that when you're not allowed to feel. Yeah. And people are terrified of feeling, but man, it's so much easier than the suffering that you're going through.
I know. It's so true. I think that, you know, for me, I was really trying not to feel. For my first depressive episode when I was living in New York, I was really trying hard. I was just looking back at some old journals, and I was trying so hard just to keep it together. Yeah. And my entries were these sort of forced, like, I'm doing okay. Today is made way better than yesterday. And, you know, and like, so good for young me to try that hard. But it ended up that I was literally on the floor because I couldn't sustain that. I couldn't sustain that level of effort just to try to make it through the day.
Right.
And what I have found, speaking of vulnerability, what I have found writing this book I wrote it thinking I will never show this to anyone. And there are stories in there that I thought I will never tell anybody this. In fact, there's one that I swore to myself I would never tell anybody.
Wow.
And I put it in the book, and then I put it out there, and then it, went crazy.
And people are probably touched the most by that story, right? Were they touched the most by that story?
Yeah, well, I
the
think
very story that you were so
really
afraid
grateful.
to tell, that's the story that
Yeah.
everyone needs to hear sometimes, because it's so powerful.
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of memoirists get accused of either oversharing or melodrama or, just yesterday there was somebody who posted a really nasty review of my book on Amazon, and then they decided somehow to take it down. But what it said was, this book is so melodramatic, I've never seen a more dysfunctional family, blah, 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 blah. And I thought, that's so interesting because there are so many more dysfunctional families than mine. Mine is definitely dysfunctional, but there's so many more out there.
I was thinking the same thing. Yeah.
Well, and also, how interesting that it bothers the reader. It's like what you were talking about, that
they're afraid.
That person is still really afraid of these kinds of truths.
Right.
And so that's not my job. That's not my job to convince them to work with them. That they can have their opinion on it. It's not my job to convince them some way or the other. Maybe they took the review down because they changed their minds because they got further in the book, because she or he said they had just begun the book. But I think that the biggest value I've gotten out of this has been that being vulnerable really pays off, because the people who are people you want to associate with, the people who will get you, your people will come.
Yeah.
When they see themselves in it and they go, I've been in places like that, or just even if they haven't been in places like that, where they say thank you for sharing what's true.
And I'm so glad that you said that, because I think that's true for everybody who's listening, is that they are so glad, when I make mistakes, or I'm so glad you just seem human now, or something, when I share for myself, they just could relate better. They feel not so alone anymore. And so I think you're right. And I was pretty vulnerable in my book too. And that was really hard, because as a therapist, you don't share anything, and my book's not a memoir, but I did tell some personal stories in it, and they were really hard to open up like that. But I think that's what people hook on the most when they, when they watch my videos or something. I get it, and they want someone to finally get it, because when nobody understands, it's so you feel so alone, and so that is the most desperate wish of so many people I talk to, is just to have someone understand. So I really, really deeply, deeply appreciate your book. I loved reading it. And I know the impact on people, because they are, your readers are the people that I've been working with for 20 years, who I love with all my heart, and are the best people in the whole world. And I know, and love animals. I mean, animals are so powerful. I remember reading this one story a long time ago, this man who had a brain surgery, and someone gave him a flying squirrel. I don't know where they got this flying squirrel, whatever, but his recovery was so amazing and fast, because he was bonding with the squirrel. And I know sometimes you don't always, you have some animals you bond with a little more than other animals, and there's some soul connections, and sometimes you just love the animal and it's not as much. But this was definitely a soul connection, and it's pretty amazing that sometimes, animals, people, spirits, they come into our lives for a reason, and we just have to notice and be grateful for that. It's pretty amazing, and a lot of.
Well, and I think also, sorry, I think also that for me, I was in a place in my life where I didn't trust people. I didn't feel safe with people.
Right.
I didn't feel like anybody could understand me, or that anybody would be true to me.
Yeah.
That anybody would be there because they cared about me, not just because either I was an inconvenience or they wanted something from me or whatever.
90 seconds.
I never doubted my dog's motivation in loving me.
Yeah.
And that kind of pure connection was a lifesaver for me.
Exactly.
Because he gave me purpose. I had to get up in the morning. I had to train him, and most of all, I had to give him a good life. Somebody said recently that that you treat your dog the way you wanted yourself to be treated as a child.
That's awesome.
And it's sort of an undoing of 60 seconds. And looking back, that is most definitely what I was doing. And I had this baby dog, who I read, at week 14, a dog is very impressionable. You want them to not have any trauma because it'll last for the rest of their life. And I remember reading, okay, now it's week 14, we're going to give this dog the best week.
Yeah,
In his brain development, that was an important thing for him. And so it's, in a way, it's a way of healing yourself by nurturing something else.
Exactly.
And for people who are empaths, who are really, very sensitive, like myself, it was the most healing relationship of my life.
It's awesome. It's so incredible. I'm so glad that you shared your story. I think so many people could relate. I know we're getting to the end of our show here, but I know so many people could relate to what you're talking about, and so I'm so glad that you joined me tonight. I hope that we're all just experimenting here with the technology. And I hope it sounded good. Next time I'll try to get a bigger screen for my next guest. But Julie, thank you so much. I know you're going to be in Minnesota, right?
Thank you.
Minnesota?
Missouri.
Missouri.
I'm in Missouri.
Anybody in Missouri?
I
don't know.
Weekend.
If anyone's in Missouri, go to Dog Medicine on Facebook. It's just Dog Medicine. You can find Julie Barton, and she'll announce any place that she's coming to speak or sign books, and you could go and check her out there. It's going to be so awesome. And for everybody who doesn't know, I'm doing a webinar on Thursday evening. So jodiaman.com/webinar. If you want to get on, I'm going to be talking about anxiety. I'm going to be talking about how to get over anxiety and what you need to do. And so you could go to jodiaman.com/webinar and you could sign up for that free interactive hour with me. It's going to be so awesome. And next week I do have another guest, Dr. Shirley. She's going to be awesome. She's going to be right here in the studio. So we're going to have a lot of fun. But Julie, I just wanted to say goodbye to everybody. But thank you so much. I'm so glad that you're doing all you do. I can't wait to meet you in person someday. I think it's going to happen.
I know. That'd be
I'm
great.
coming to San Francisco soon. She lives in that area, somewhere around there. I know it's a huge area, but Julie, I'd love to have you on again if you'd come on again. That'd be awesome.
I'd love to. That'd be really fun.
Awesome. I think we could talk for a really long time, but I do have someone coming in. So everybody, thank you.
All right.
Keep coming to Keep Calm in a Crazy World. Come next Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern. And you could either come to keepcalmradio.com or right here on Facebook. You could watch it live and ask your questions. I'm sorry we didn't get to any questions this evening, but I really wanted you to hear from Julie because she speaks from her heart. And she gets it, and she knows you, and she's just, really loving. And you really touched me, Julie. Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jodi.
Keep commenting on here, because maybe Julie and I will come back, and if you have any questions, we'll answer them, okay, for you? Okay. Have a great evening. We love you all. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for the hearts and the thumbs up. Bye.